Welcome. Okinawa, 2016. A place of beauty, yet shadowed by history. Rina Shimabukuro, a 20-year-old, worked diligently in a quiet office. Her life, seemingly ordinary, was about to take a dark turn. The island, a blend of Japanese tradition and American influence due to the significant U.S. military presence, held a complex undercurrent of tension. Decades of protests against the bases had shaped the local culture. Rina, having recently started dating a local Okinawan man, found a sense of normalcy. The relationship felt steady, a welcome contrast to her demanding work schedule. This evening, after a long day, she decided on a simple walk along the canal, a familiar route she often took to unwind. It was around 8 p.m., the air warm and humid. She wore a black parka and raspberry sneakers, leaving her wallet behind. Before stepping out, she briefly interacted with her friends online, posting a casual update. Unbeknownst to her, a series of events were unfolding that would irrevocably alter her life and ignite long-simmering resentments. Later that evening, Kenneth Gatson, the local man Rina was seeing, made a crucial decision. He led the police to a secluded forested area, a location significantly smaller than the sites of past tragedies. His confession, delivered with a chilling calmness, sent shockwaves through the small community. The media, eager for a story, immediately descended upon Okinawa, demanding answers. The incident quickly escalated, threatening to become a major political scandal, especially given the historical context of U.S. military involvement. This wasn't an isolated event, it echoed a painful past, a past of violence and unresolved grief for many Okinawans. The promise of reforms from the Japanese government felt hollow to those who had long suffered. Kenneth, a civilian now, waited with the police, the silence amplifying the gravity of the situation. His actions, seemingly calculated, were about to unravel a life and reopen old wounds. Weeks passed. Investigators meticulously reviewed surveillance footage from the industrial area bordering the canal. Hundreds of vehicles were recorded, but one stood out, a red SUV, later identified as belonging to Kenneth Gatson. A search of the vehicle revealed a black suitcase. Inside, investigators discovered the decomposing body of Rina Shimabukuro. The harsh Okinawan heat had accelerated the process, making identification challenging. The discovery sent a wave of shock and anger through the island. Locals, already vocal about the presence of U.S. military bases, intensified their demands for greater accountability and control. The international media also took notice, adding further pressure on the Japanese government. The weight of history, the unresolved pain of past incidents, and the ongoing presence of foreign forces converged in this tragic event. The aftermath was swift and severe. The Japanese government, under international pressure, promised further reforms regarding the U.S. military presence in Okinawa. Kenneth Gatson was arrested and eventually sentenced to life imprisonment. The case reignited the debate about the cost of the military bases and their impact on local communities. The apology from U.S. President Barack Obama offered little solace to those who had lost Rina. Her family and friends grieved, the vibrant life of a young woman extinguished too soon. The incident served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of individuals caught in the crosscurrents of history and geopolitical power. The simple walk along the canal had become a tragic turning point, a moment forever etched in the memory of Okinawa. The canal flowed on, seemingly undisturbed by the tragedy that had occurred along its banks. Security cameras continued their silent vigil, recording the comings and goings of the night. The red SUV was just one of hundreds that had passed by that evening. The seemingly ordinary residential buildings on one side of the canal concealed untold stories, lives lived in the shadow of the military bases. The life of Okinawa continued, a delicate balance between tradition and modernity, peace and tension. But the memory of Rina Shimabukuro lingered, a poignant symbol of the unresolved issues that continued to shape the island's destiny. The investigation, while concluded, left many questions unanswered, a lingering sense of unease in the tropical paradise. Detective Harding leaned forward, the harsh fluorescent light glinting off his thinning hair. "Ms. Ito," he began, his voice a low rumble, "we need to revisit your statement regarding your interactions with Mr. Gatson. You mentioned a business meeting, but the details remain vague. Specifically, the nature of the agreement." Ms. Ito fidgeted with her hands, avoiding his gaze. We discussed potential investments, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. Nothing illegal. Harding raised an eyebrow. Investments that required clandestine meetings near the docks? Investments that involved a substantial sum of money originating from offshore accounts? The financial records paint a very different picture, Ms. Ito. A picture that suggests a far deeper connection between you and Mr. Gatson than you've admitted. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. We found traces of a rare soil type on Mr. Gatson's SUV, a soil type unique to a private estate owned by your family. Care to explain that? Ms. Ito's composure finally cracked. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. He promised me a way out, she whispered. A way to erase the past. I didn't know the full extent of what he was planning. I just wanted to protect my family. Harding sighed. Across town, in a luxurious office tower, Elias Vance stared out at the rain-soaked cityscape. The city lights blurred through the glass, mirroring the turmoil in his mind. Vance, a powerful and influential businessman, had been a close associate of Kenneth Gatson for years. Their partnership had been built on mutual respect and shared ambition, but now, the shadow of Gatson's arrest loomed large over Vance's empire. He'd been meticulously careful, distancing himself from Gatson in the weeks leading up to the investigation, but the whispers and rumors were impossible to ignore. The authorities were probing the financial dealings of several prominent figures, and Vance knew he was under scrutiny. He received a call from his chief of security, a terse message about an unexpected visit from a representative of the Japanese government. Apparently, their inquiries extended beyond the U.S. legal system. Vance felt a chill run down his spine. The U.S. military presence in Okinawa was a sensitive topic, and any connection to Gatson could have devastating consequences for his business interests. He had to act quickly, to control the narrative before the situation spiraled out of his control. Old Man Hemlock, the proprietor of Hemlock's Curios, adjusted his spectacles, peering at the worn leather-bound journal. The journal had been anonymously delivered to his shop a week ago, tucked away amongst a pile of forgotten relics. Its pages were filled with cryptic entries, detailing strange symbols and coded messages. Hemlock, a lifelong collector of obscure artifacts, sensed that this journal held a secret connected to the events surrounding Kenneth Gatson. He'd spent hours deciphering the text, piecing together fragments of a hidden narrative. The journal spoke of a clandestine organization, a group obsessed with ancient prophecies and forbidden knowledge. Gatson, it seemed, had been a key player in their activities, using his wealth and influence to acquire rare artifacts and obscure texts. Hemlock discovered a recurring symbol, a stylized serpent coiled around a dagger. He recognized it from an old grimoire he'd acquired years ago, a grimoire detailing rituals of dark magic. A shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't just about money or power, this was about something far more sinister. He knew he had to alert the authorities, but he hesitated. Hana Sato hurried down the narrow street, the humid Okinawan air clinging to her skin. She clutched a small, intricately carved wooden box to her chest, her heart pounding in her ears. Hana was Gatson's daughter, and she'd inherited more than just his wealth, she'd inherited his secrets. The wooden box contained a vital piece of evidence, a microchip containing encrypted files detailing Gatson's illegal activities and the names of his associates. Hana knew she was being watched. She'd noticed the black sedan following her for days, the men in dark suits always lurking in the shadows. She'd tried to contact the police, but they dismissed her concerns, telling her it was just a coincidence. She couldn't trust anyone. She reached a bustling marketplace, weaving through the crowds, hoping to lose her pursuers. She glanced over her shoulder, spotting the black sedan a block behind. Panic surged through her. She had to get this information to someone who could protect it, someone who wouldn't be silenced. She ducked into a crowded tea house, seeking refuge amongst the chattering locals. But she knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The hunt was on. Detective Harding stared at the map spread across his desk. The red pin marked a location deep within the jungle, a place known as the Serpent's Shrine, a forgotten temple rumored to be the site of ancient rituals. The journal Hemlock had provided, combined with the encrypted files from Hana Sato's box, pointed to this location as the heart of Gatson's operation. He dispatched a team to investigate, instructing them to proceed with caution. This wasn't just a simple investigation anymore, it was a descent into something dark and dangerous. Harding knew that Gatson's associates were likely still out there, and they wouldn't hesitate to defend their secrets. He felt a sense of grim determination. He had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The fate of Okinawa, and perhaps more, might depend on it. The jungle held its secrets close, but Harding was prepared to face whatever lurked within. He hoped his team would return with answers, before it was too late. Hannah ducked into a shadowed alleyway, the scent of jasmine and decaying fruit heavy in the air. The wooden box felt unusually warm against her skin, a subtle vibration humming beneath her fingertips. Gatson had always warned her about the box, whispering tales of its power, a power tied to their family's lineage, a lineage steeped in secrets and shadowed by danger. He'd never fully explained what it was capable of, only that it needed to be protected, kept out of the wrong hands. Now, with Detective Harding hot on their trail, Hannah knew she couldn't hesitate. The journal mentioned a hidden passage near the shrine, a way to bypass the main entrance. But the journal was cryptic, filled with riddles and archaic symbols. She had to decipher it, and fast. The weight of her father's legacy, and perhaps her own life, rested on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, the humid air filling her lungs. The jungle pressed in around her, alive with unseen sounds. This was it. The first step towards uncovering the truth, and perhaps, escaping the darkness that pursued her. The box pulsed again, a faint echo of something ancient and powerful. Detective Harding pushed aside a curtain of thick vines, stepping into the clearing before the serpent's shrine. The air here was thick with humidity and the smell of damp earth. The temple was far more imposing than he'd anticipated, its stone walls covered in intricate carvings depicting serpentine figures and strange, unfamiliar deities. A palpable sense of age and forgotten rituals clung to the ruins. He consulted the map again, comparing it to the crumbling architecture. The journal mentioned a specific sequence of carvings, a key to unlocking a hidden entrance. Harding ran his hand over the weathered stone, searching for the markings described. He felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, the usual cacophony of sounds muted. He knew this place was more than just an ancient ruin, it was a repository of forgotten power, a place where the veil between worlds felt thin. He hoped he wasn't too late. The journal hinted at a ritual, one that could unleash something terrible. Inside the shrine, Hannah navigated a narrow, winding passage, the air cool and damp. The wooden box pulsed brighter now, its warmth intensifying as she approached a section of the wall covered in ancient symbols. The symbols mirrored those in the journal, a complex series of interwoven lines and curves. Guided by the box's subtle vibrations, she carefully traced the symbols with her fingers. As she completed the final line, a section of the wall groaned and shifted inward, revealing a hidden chamber. The chamber was small and circular, its walls lined with shelves holding dusty scrolls and artifacts. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a single, obsidian dagger. A wave of energy washed over Hannah, leaving her breathless. The box dimmed, its glow fading. She knew, instinctively, that the dagger was what Gatson had been protecting. And now, she was the one who had to decide what to do with it. A sudden crash echoed through the chamber as Detective Harding burst through the newly revealed passage. He spun around, gun drawn, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw Hannah standing before the pedestal. Hannah Sato. Stand down, he barked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. He took in the glowing box in her hands and the obsidian dagger on the pedestal. I knew you'd be here. Hannah froze, her hand instinctively moving to protect the box. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, trying to conceal the dagger. Harding advanced cautiously, his eyes never leaving the obsidian blade. Don't play coy. The journal doesn't lie. That dagger, it's connected to a series of disappearances, ancient rituals, things you wouldn't understand. He gestured towards the dagger. Hand it over, Hannah. This ends now. The jungle held its breath once more, waiting. Hannah met Harding's gaze, her fear replaced by a steely determination. She raised the wooden box, and a surge of energy flowed from it, enveloping the obsidian dagger. The dagger lifted effortlessly from the pedestal, hovering in the air between Hannah and Harding. The air crackled with power, the carvings on the walls glowing with an eerie light. Harding lowered his gun, his jaw slack with disbelief. What is that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Hannah didn't answer. She focused her will, channeling the energy of the box, and the dagger floated towards her, settling gently into her outstretched hand. The jungle seemed to sigh, the sounds of the night returning with renewed vigor. The true test had just begun. The power she now held was immense, terrifying, and she was only beginning to understand its implications. The air crackled with unseen power. Harding hesitated, his gun wavering slightly. He'd dealt with criminals, with threats, but nothing like this. The energy radiating from the box and the dagger was palpable, a force he couldn't comprehend. What is that?" he managed to stammer, his voice betraying his unease. Hannah didn't answer. Her focus was absolute, every muscle in her body taut. The dagger pulsed, its dark surface reflecting the ethereal glow of the box. It seemed to yearn for her hand, a silent promise of power. A faint tremor ran through the stone floor beneath their feet. The symbols on the wall began to glow with an intensity that mirrored the box, casting dancing shadows across the chamber. This wasn't just a relic, it was a conduit, a gateway to something unknown. Harding watched, transfixed, as the dagger slowly drifted towards Hannah, as if guided by an invisible force. He knew he should intervene, but a primal instinct held him back. This was beyond his authority, beyond his understanding. He felt a growing sense of dread, a premonition that he was witnessing something profoundly dangerous, something that could unravel the very fabric of reality. The humming intensified, a low resonant frequency that vibrated in Harding's bones. The chamber seemed to shift around them. The stone walls appeared to ripple, the air thickening with an unnatural energy. The glowing symbols pulsed in rhythm with the dagger's hum, creating a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic display. Hannah maintained her concentration, her grip firm on the wooden box. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her eyes remained fixed on the hovering dagger. She felt a connection to it, a sense of understanding that transcended words. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, a tool, a fragment of something ancient and powerful. Harding took a cautious step forward, his hand hovering near his holster. "Hannah, stop. You don't know what you're doing." His voice was strained, barely audible above the humming. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes, not madness, but something else entirely. Determination, yes, but also a profound sadness, a weight of responsibility that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. The shadows in the chamber deepened, swirling around them like living things. The air grew colder, and Harding could feel a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He sensed that they were not alone. Something else was present in the chamber, something unseen, something waiting. With a soft thrum, the obsidian dagger settled into Hannah's palm. The moment the cold metal touched her skin, a surge of energy coursed through her body, a jolt that stole her breath. The wooden box dimmed, its vibrant glow receding to a soft, warm pulse. The symbols on the wall flickered and faded, their light slowly dying. Hannah gasped, her eyes widening as she felt the power of the dagger flow into her. It wasn't a destructive force, but a raw, untamed energy, a potential for both creation and destruction. Tiny sparks of dark energy danced between her fingers and the dagger's blade, a silent exchange of power. She felt a connection to the dagger, a sense of shared history, of ancient purpose. The weight of the weapon felt strangely natural in her hand, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Harding lowered his gun slightly, his initial apprehension replaced by a cautious curiosity. He watched as Hannah's expression changed, her face hardening with resolve. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet strength, a sense of purpose. He realized that she wasn't just a young woman, she was something more. A guardian, perhaps? A protector? Hannah met Harding's gaze, her eyes now holding a depth that belied her age. The power emanating from her was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it was undeniable. It wasn't the brute force of a weapon, but a controlled energy, a focused intensity. Harding felt a strange pull, a sense of being observed, judged. He swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. What are you going to do with it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Hannah didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the dagger in her hand, then back at Harding. "This dagger, it's a key," she finally said, her voice steady and clear. "A key to something that needs to be protected." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "And I intend to use it to do just that." A new determination shone in her eyes, a resolve that left no room for doubt. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of residual energy. The air crackled with anticipation. Hannah turned and walked towards a section of the wall that had previously seemed solid. As she approached, a section of the stone shimmered and dissolved, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness. The dagger in her hand seemed to guide her way, its dark blade pulsing with a faint light. Harding hesitated for a moment, then followed her into the passage. He knew he was stepping into the unknown, into a realm beyond his comprehension. He had no idea what awaited them, but he knew he couldn't abandon her. She was clearly connected to this dagger, to this place, and somehow, he felt he was meant to be there too. The passage was cold and damp, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone. The darkness seemed to press in on them, but Hannah walked with a confident stride, as if she knew exactly where she was going. The adventure had just begun. The passage felt ancient, the air thick with the scent of dust and forgotten magic. The symbols etched into the stone pulsed with a soft, internal light, casting dancing shadows that played across Hannah's face. She moved with a newfound confidence, the dagger a natural extension of her arm. Harding remained at the entrance, a silent sentinel, his expression unreadable. He hadn't followed her, a deliberate choice that both intrigued and unsettled her. The energy flowing through her intensified as she ventured deeper, a tingling sensation spreading from her fingertips to her toes. It felt like she was walking towards something, but what that something was remained shrouded in mystery. A low hum resonated from the walls, growing steadily louder, a subtle warning perhaps, or an invitation. The passage twisted and turned, descending into the earth, the light from the symbols her only guide. She focused on the feeling, letting it lead her, trusting in the power that now resided within her. This wasn't just about finding whatever lay at the end of this tunnel, it was about understanding the power itself. The hum intensified, and she noticed the symbols began to shift, rearranging themselves into patterns she didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. They felt familiar. The passage opened into a vast cavern, the scale of which stole Hannah's breath. In the center stood a crystalline structure, towering towards the unseen ceiling, radiating a blinding white light. It pulsed with energy, the source of the hum she had felt throughout the passage. The light was almost painful to look at directly, yet she found herself drawn towards it, compelled by an irresistible force. Harding entered the cavern behind her, his footsteps echoing in the immense space. He shielded his eyes with a hand, but his gaze remained fixed on the crystal. "What is that?" he asked, his voice hushed with reverence. Hannah didn't answer immediately, her attention fully absorbed by the crystalline structure. She could feel its power, raw and untamed, a force unlike anything she had ever encountered. It resonated with the energy within her, amplifying it, making it feel almost overwhelming. As she stepped closer, images flashed through her mind, visions of ancient rituals, forgotten civilizations, and beings of immense power. The crystal wasn't just a source of energy, it was a repository of knowledge, a gateway to something far beyond human comprehension. Hesitantly, Hannah reached out and touched the crystalline surface. A jolt of pure energy surged through her, a blinding flash of white light engulfing her senses. Visions flooded her mind, swirling galaxies, collapsing stars, the birth and death of worlds. She saw faces, countless faces, both familiar and alien, their expressions conveying a range of emotions, joy, sorrow, fear, and understanding. It was a torrent of information, overwhelming yet strangely coherent. She saw the history of the dagger, its creation by a long-lost civilization, its purpose as a conduit for immense power. She saw Harding, not as the stoic companion she knew, but as a guardian, bound to protect this place for centuries. The visions subsided as quickly as they had begun, leaving her breathless and disoriented. The connection to the crystal remained, a faint hum resonating within her. She pulled her hand back, her fingers tingling. Harding stepped forward, his hand gently falling on her shoulder. His touch was grounding, a reassuring presence in the aftermath of the overwhelming visions. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Hannah met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the ethereal glow of the crystal. She felt changed, altered by the experience. The knowledge she had gained was immense, but also terrifying. I saw things," she stammered, struggling to articulate the enormity of what she had witnessed. "Things I don't understand." Harding nodded slowly. "The crystal holds the memories of ages," he said. "It can be overwhelming. But you are strong, Hannah. Stronger than you realize." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "The dagger chose you for a reason. You are the key." Hannah turned back to the crystal, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. The visions had shown her a purpose, a responsibility. She understood now that the dagger wasn't just a weapon, it was a tool, a key to unlocking a power that could save or destroy. As she focused her will, the crystalline structure began to glow brighter, its light intensifying until it was almost unbearable. A low rumble echoed through the cavern, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden passage. It was darker than the previous one, but a sense of anticipation, of destiny, filled the air. Hannah took a deep breath, the obsidian dagger held firmly in her hand. "Let's go," she said, her voice resolute. Harding nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and respect. Together, they stepped into the darkness, ready to face whatever lay ahead. "I saw potential," Hannah began, her voice a little shaky but firm. "The crystal showed me a way to stabilize the energy fluctuations. But it's not a simple process. It requires a focal point, something resonant." Harding nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over the intricate carvings on the crystal's surface. He knew Hannah's inherent abilities, her sensitivity to energy. This was beyond anything they had anticipated. The visions she experienced weren't just random glimpses, they were a map, a guide. A dangerous one, perhaps. "Resonant how?" he pressed gently. Hannah hesitated. The visions had been fragmented, symbolic. She grasped at the fleeting images, a specific constellation, a type of metal, a feeling of profound loss. I don't know exactly. But I feel it's connected to the ancient artifact, the Sunstone." The legends spoke of its power to harmonize chaotic energies. Harding frowned. The Sunstone was a myth, dismissed by most historians as mere folklore. Yet, the legends were persistent, woven into the very fabric of their world's history. If Hannah was right, finding it would be a perilous undertaking. The Sunstone is just a story, Hannah. A legend to frighten children. Hannah met his skeptical gaze. Legends often hold a kernel of truth, Harding. Days turned into weeks, and Hannah and Harding followed the fragmented clues gleaned from the crystal's visions. Their search led them to the treacherous peaks of the Serpent's Spine, a mountain range notorious for its unpredictable weather and hidden dangers. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, a testament to the raw power of the earth. They navigated narrow paths, battled fierce winds, and endured freezing temperatures. Harding, ever the pragmatist, focused on practicalities, supplies, shelter, potential threats. Hannah, driven by the visions, followed an intuitive pull, a faint resonance that guided her deeper into the mountains. The crystal pulsed faintly in her pocket, a constant reminder of their purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Hannah stopped abruptly. She pointed towards a swirling mist in the distance. "There," she breathed, her voice barely audible above the wind. "I feel it. The Sunstone, or what remains of it." Harding squinted, trying to pierce the veil of mist. At first, he saw nothing but swirling vapor. But as his eyes adjusted, a faint shimmer began to emerge, a structure of impossible geometry, almost invisible, as if it were woven from the very fabric of the air. As they drew closer, the structure resolved itself into a colossal crystal formation, the Sunstone. It was far larger than any of the legends described, its multifaceted surface radiating a warm, golden light that seemed to pulse with life. Strange, intricate symbols were etched into its surface, glowing faintly. The air around the sunstone crackled with energy, a palpable hum that resonated deep within Hannah's bones. She reached out, drawn to the crystal as if by an invisible cord. Harding held back, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Be careful, Hannah," he warned. "We don't know what power this thing holds." Hannah ignored him, her fingers tracing the glowing symbols. As her skin made contact with the crystal, a wave of energy surged through her, not the blinding flash of the first time, but a gentle, warm embrace. Visions flooded her mind, not chaotic galaxies or dying stars, but images of harmony, balance, and renewal. She saw the sunstone as a conduit, a focal point for harnessing natural energies, a key to restoring equilibrium to their world. But within the visions, she also saw shadows, a darkness that sought to corrupt the sunstone's power, to twist it for its own malevolent purposes. But the sunstone's power was immense, overwhelming. The energy flowed through Hannah with increasing intensity, threatening to consume her. The golden light flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows across the mountain. Harding stepped forward, shielding her with his body, trying to absorb some of the excess energy. "Hannah, you have to focus," he shouted, his voice strained. "Don't let it control you." But the visions were relentless, a torrent of images and sensations that threatened to drown her. She felt the darkness within the sunstone, a cold, insidious presence that sought to corrupt its power. It whispered promises of ultimate control, of unimaginable power. Hannah fought against the influence, clinging to the image of balance and harmony she had seen in her visions. She realized the sunstone wasn't just a tool, it was a living entity, with its own will and desires. And it was resisting her attempts to control it. The ground trembled beneath their feet. With a final surge of will, Hannah managed to regain control. The chaotic energy subsided, replaced by a steady, brilliant golden light. The tremors ceased, and the air cleared. The sunstone pulsed with a newfound stability, its light radiating outwards, bathing the surrounding mountains in warmth. As the energy stabilized, a section of the crystal wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a hidden chamber within. Inside, a single pedestal stood, upon which rested a small, intricately carved box made of obsidian. The box seemed to hum with a quiet power, a subtle resonance that mirrored the sunstone's energy. Hannah and Harding exchanged a look of awe and apprehension. They had found what they were looking for, but the journey was far from over. The box held the next piece of the puzzle, the key to unlocking the sunstone's true potential, and perhaps, to confronting the darkness that lurked within. Hannah gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. The golden light within her wasn't just power, it felt like understanding, a connection to something ancient and vast. Harding's concern was a grounding force, a reminder of the stakes. He'd seen the sunstone's power firsthand, the destructive potential if uncontrolled. "Are you all right, Hannah?" he asked, his voice strained. "The energy, it feels different now. Calmer, but stronger." She nodded slowly, focusing on the sunstone's rhythmic pulse. It wasn't just radiating light, it was communicating, showing her visions, swirling nebulae, the birth of stars, the slow dance of tectonic plates. It was a history, a future, all contained within the crystal's heart. But amidst the wonder, a discordant note emerged, a flicker of shadow within the golden light, a sense of something wrong. A subtle vibration ran through the ground, almost imperceptible, yet it made the hairs on Harding's arms stand on end. "Hannah, I don't like this," he murmured, scanning the surrounding mountains. "Something's shifting." The air grew colder, and the golden light around them seemed to dim slightly, as if fighting against an encroaching darkness. The sunstone, once a beacon of pure energy, now pulsed with a hesitant uncertainty. A figure detached itself from the shadows, a silent observer to Hannah's struggle. Cloaked in deep indigo, the figure moved with an unnatural grace, their presence chilling the air. The hood obscured their face, but a faint, violet glow pulsed from within, hinting at the source of their power. They had been watching, waiting for the right moment to intervene. The sunstone's resurgence had disrupted their plans, revealing a power they sought to control, not understand. A cruel smile touched the figure's lips, hidden within the shadows. "Interesting," a voice rasped, echoing across the mountainside, laced with a subtle mockery. "The little spark has grown, and attracted unwanted attention." The figure began to ascend the treacherous path towards the sunstone, their movements fluid and purposeful. They carried no weapon, yet an aura of menace surrounded them, a palpable sense of ancient malice. This wasn't a simple curiosity, this was a calculated move, a power grab disguised as observation. The violet glow intensified, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the landscape, a harbinger of the conflict to come. Harding instinctively reached for the hilt of his sword, his eyes fixed on the approaching figure. Hannah, sensing the encroaching darkness, instinctively reached out towards the sunstone. The golden light surged, responding to her intent, forming a shimmering tendril that snaked towards the cloaked figure. The light wasn't an attack, but a probe, a question. It sought to understand the source of the shadow, to discern its nature. The violet glow within the figure's hood flickered violently as the golden tendril approached. A wave of nausea washed over Hannah as the two energies clashed, a jarring dissonance that threatened to overwhelm her. The air crackled with power, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The tendril of golden light brushed against the figure's cloak, and a gasp escaped their lips. The violet glow dimmed momentarily, revealing a glimpse of a face, pale, gaunt, and etched with an age beyond comprehension. A flicker of fear, quickly masked by anger, crossed their features. "Foolish girl," the figure hissed. "You cannot comprehend the forces you are meddling with." The golden light recoiled, but not before leaving a faint golden residue on the figure's cloak, a mark of its power. Harding moved swiftly, positioning himself between Hannah and the encroaching darkness. His sword, forged from star metal, gleamed in the fading golden light. "Stay back," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. The sunstone pulsed erratically, its light now fragmented, reflecting the turmoil of the battle brewing. The violet glow emanating from the figure intensified, and they raised a hand, palm open, as if summoning something from the shadows. The air grew thick with a sense of foreboding, a feeling of impending doom. "This power is not yours to wield," the figure declared, their voice now laced with a chilling certainty. "It belongs to the Ancient Ones. And you are merely a pawn." The ground began to shake more violently, and cracks appeared in the surrounding rock. The sunstone's light flickered dangerously, threatening to extinguish completely. The battle for the sunstone had begun, and the fate of the world might very well hang in the balance. Hannah stood beside Harding, her eyes blazing with determination. The golden energy within her flowed freely, no longer a source of fear, but of strength. She channeled the sunstone's power, weaving it into a protective shield around them. Harding held his sword defensively, his gaze unwavering. "We won't let you destroy this," Hannah stated, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. The figure laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "Destroy? No, little spark. I intend to reshape it. To harness its power for my own purposes." With a final, defiant surge, Hannah unleashed a concentrated beam of golden energy towards the figure. The sunstone responded with a powerful, unstable pulse of light, momentarily blinding both Hannah and Harding. The air crackled with raw power, and the mountain trembled as the ancient forces collided. The battle had escalated, and the outcome remained uncertain. The air crackled with barely contained power. Harding's stance was unwavering, a bulwark against the encroaching shadows that seemed to seep from the very stones of the ancient temple. "We don't have time for this," he growled, his gaze fixed on the cloaked figure. "Whatever you are, you won't pass." Hannah nodded, focusing her energy. The shield shimmered, a beacon of defiant gold against the oppressive gloom. It wasn't a perfect barrier, tendrils of darkness probed at its edges, seeking a weakness. The sunstone's light pulsed faster, mirroring the urgency in Hannah's heart. She could feel the figure's presence, cold and ancient, a hunger that threatened to consume everything. Harding shifted, his sword a silver arc. "Prepare yourself," he warned, his voice low and steady. "It's gathering strength." The shadows around the figure coalesced, forming clawed hands that reached towards the shield. The temple seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. The golden light fought valiantly, but it was a losing battle if they didn't find the source of this darkness. Hannah felt a surge of desperation, a fear she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. She had to protect Harding, protect the sunstone, protect the world from whatever this was. The shield held, but barely. The darkness pressed against it, a relentless tide threatening to overwhelm the golden light. The temple's ancient carvings seemed to writhe in the shadows, their faces twisting into expressions of silent horror. Harding met the figure's gaze, his own eyes burning with defiance. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. The figure remained silent, its hood obscuring its face. A low, rasping sound emanated from beneath the cloak, like dry leaves skittering across stone. It wasn't a voice, not exactly, but a resonance that vibrated in Hannah's bones. The shadows around the figure intensified, forming tendrils that lashed out at the shield. Hannah gritted her teeth, channeling more power into the barrier. The sunstone throbbed, its light growing brighter, fueled by her determination. She felt a connection to the stone, a sense of shared purpose. But the figure was relentless, its shadowy assault growing stronger with each passing moment. Harding moved forward, his sword a blur of silver, attempting to distract the creature. "Hannah, look out!" he shouted, deflecting a shadowy claw that aimed for her. Harding's sword met the shadowy claw with a shower of sparks. The impact sent a jolt of energy through his arm, the star metal humming with suppressed power. He grunted, maintaining his defensive stance, forcing the creature to redirect its attack. The shadows recoiled slightly, momentarily disrupted by the force of his blow. But the figure was patient, its movements fluid and unsettling. It seemed to anticipate Harding's every move, its shadowy limbs weaving through the air with unnatural grace. Hannah watched, her heart pounding in her chest. Harding was a formidable warrior, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. The creature's attacks weren't brute force, but insidious probes, attempting to find a weakness in the shield, a chink in their armor. She needed to do more than just defend, she needed to attack. She focused her energy, gathering the sunstone's power into a concentrated beam of golden light. It was a risky move, draining her strength, but it was their only chance to break through the creature's defenses. With a surge of will, Hannah unleashed the beam. A brilliant column of golden light erupted from the sunstone, lancing towards the cloaked figure. The light struck true, momentarily disrupting the creature's form. Shadows writhed and recoiled, hissing as if burned. The figure staggered back, its hood falling slightly to reveal a glimpse of pale, decaying skin beneath. A guttural sound escaped its lips, a sound of pain and fury. But the effect was fleeting. The darkness quickly reformed around the creature, shielding it from the full force of the light. It raised a skeletal hand, and the shadows coalesced into a swirling vortex, aimed directly at Hannah. Harding intercepted, deflecting the vortex with his sword, but the force of the impact sent him stumbling backward. He cried out, clutching his arm. "Hannah," he yelled, his voice strained. The shield flickered, weakened by the creature's renewed assault. The shield groaned, cracked spiderwebbing across its surface. Hannah felt her strength waning, the sunstone's energy reserves depleted. The cloaked figure was regaining its composure, the shadows swirling around it with renewed intensity. A malevolent grin formed beneath the hood, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "You cannot stop what is coming," the figure rasped, its voice now a chilling whisper that seemed to penetrate Hannah's mind. "The darkness will consume all." Harding, despite his injury, stood his ground, his sword raised. "We will not let it," he growled, his eyes locked on the creature. He knew they were losing, but he refused to surrender. Hannah looked at Harding, a surge of determination flowing through her. She couldn't give up. Not now. She had to find a way to defeat this creature, to protect the world from the encroaching darkness. She glanced at the sunstone, its light dimming, and knew she had to find another source of power, a way to reignite its flame. The battle was far from over. The shield shattered, sending shards of shimmering crystal scattering across the stone floor. Hannah stumbled back, the force of the impact jarring her bones. The cloaked figure advanced, its shadowy form solidifying, revealing glimpses of sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. A chilling whisper echoed in the chamber, a voice devoid of warmth or emotion. "Your light is fading, little sunstone wielder." It reached out a clawed hand, aiming for her throat. Harding roared, interposing himself between Hannah and the creature. He parried a blow, the clang of steel against shadow reverberating through the cavern. He knew he couldn't hold it off for long. The creature's power was immense, fueled by something ancient and malevolent. He needed to buy Hannah time, to allow her to gather her remaining strength. The air crackled with energy, a silent promise of impending destruction. He felt a searing pain in his side, a shadow claw having found a weak spot in his defense. He gritted his teeth, refusing to yield. "Run, Hannah," he yelled, deflecting another attack. "Get out of here." The creature laughed, a dry, rasping sound that grated on Hannah's nerves. It seemed to relish their struggle, feeding on their desperation. Harding fought with desperate ferocity, his sword a blur of silver against the encroaching darkness. He was a seasoned warrior, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. The creature's attacks were relentless, its movements unpredictable. Each parry, each block, drained his energy. He could feel his stamina failing, his muscles screaming in protest. He managed to land a blow on the creature's arm, a spark of light momentarily disrupting its form, but it seemed barely phased. Hannah knelt, clutching the sunstone, trying to channel the last vestiges of its power. The golden light flickered weakly, threatening to extinguish completely. She focused on the warmth of the stone, on the memory of her mentor's teachings. She had to find a way to amplify the sunstone's energy, to unleash a final, devastating attack. The creature sensed her renewed focus and intensified its assault. Shadows lashed out, seeking to ensnare her, to crush her spirit. Harding staggered under the creature's assault, his sword arm trembling. A dark energy pulsed from the creature, weakening his resolve, clouding his vision. He felt a cold dread creeping into his heart, the certainty of impending defeat. He knew he couldn't win this fight alone. He glanced at Hannah, seeing the desperate concentration on her face, the faint glow of the sunstone. He had to buy her more time, even if it meant sacrificing himself. He planted his feet, bracing himself for another blow. "Hannah," he roared, a defiant challenge against the encroaching darkness. "Now!" He knew it was a gamble, a desperate plea for her to unleash the sunstone's full power. He felt a surge of darkness invade his mind, a tempting offer of oblivion, but he fought it back, clinging to the hope that Hannah could succeed. With a cry of effort, Hannah raised the sunstone high above her head. The stone pulsed with a blinding golden light, intensifying until it became a radiant sphere of pure energy. The light erupted outwards, engulfing the cloaked figure in a searing wave of power. The creature shrieked, a sound of pure agony, as the golden light burned away its shadows. The cavern filled with a deafening roar, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burnt darkness. The creature thrashed and writhed, its form dissolving under the intense light. The shadows that had clung to it for so long dissipated, leaving nothing but a faint wisp of smoke. Harding watched in awe as the creature was consumed by the light, its power finally vanquished. The golden light faded, leaving Hannah trembling and exhausted. The sunstone dimmed in her hand, its energy reserves completely depleted. She sank to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Harding slowly lowered his sword, leaning heavily on it for support. He walked towards Hannah, his face etched with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Hannah looked up at him, a weak smile gracing her lips. I think so," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "It's over." She held out the sunstone, its glow now a mere ember. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. They had faced darkness and survived, but they knew that other shadows still lurked in the corners of the world. The silence after the light was deafening. Hannah's vision swam, the world slowly resolving from a kaleidoscope of gold. She felt utterly drained, every muscle aching. Harding's silhouette was blurry at first, then sharpened as he focused on her. Concern etched lines around his eyes. "Hannah, are you all right?" His voice was rough, laced with worry. She managed a weak nod, her hand instinctively tightening around the sunstone. It pulsed faintly against her skin, a residual warmth offering small comfort. The cloaked figure was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving only the lingering scent of ozone and a profound sense of unease. The air felt heavy, charged with an unknown power. I think so," she whispered, pushing herself up onto her elbows. "The stone, it worked, but it cost a lot." Harding knelt beside her, his gaze searching hers. "It did. You saved us, Hannah." "I don't know what that thing was, But whatever it was, it wouldn't have stood a chance against you. He reached out a hand, offering steadying support. She took it gratefully, his strength a reassuring presence. "We need to understand what that was," she said, her voice gaining strength. "And why it was here." The lingering darkness felt like a threat, a promise of more to come. Hannah closed her eyes, focusing on the sunstone. Its faint glow intensified, not with the blinding power of before, but with a steady, internal light. She reached out with her mind, attempting to connect with the stone's energy, to understand what it had unleashed. The network of fine lines on its surface seemed to pulse, like tiny rivers of light flowing beneath the crystal. Images flickered behind her eyelids, fleeting glimpses of swirling galaxies, ancient symbols she didn't recognize, and a vast, cold emptiness. It wasn't a simple source of power, it was a conduit, a gateway. The stone wasn't just radiating light, it was drawing upon something far greater, something beyond comprehension. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't over. The defeat of the cloaked figure felt like only a temporary reprieve. The sunstone's power had revealed a deeper, more terrifying truth. There were forces at play here that she couldn't possibly grasp, and they were far more powerful than anything she had faced before. Harding rose to his feet, his movements slow and deliberate. He surveyed the surrounding forest, his eyes scanning the shadows beneath the trees. The air felt different now, tainted with a lingering sense of malice. He tested the edge of his sword, the familiar weight comforting in his hand. The fight had taken its toll, but his resolve remained unbroken. He had witnessed firsthand the power of the unknown, and he knew they were facing something far greater than a simple monster. "We need to find answers," he said, his voice firm. "This isn't just about stopping one creature. It's about understanding what's happening here, what's coming." He started walking towards the deeper part of the forest, his boots crunching on the fallen leaves. Hannah followed, her hands still clutching the sunstone. The forest seemed to watch them, silent and watchful, concealing secrets in its depths. The forest floor was damp and overgrown, the air thick with the scent of pine and decaying leaves. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting the scene in a perpetual twilight. Hannah kept glancing at the sunstone, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. She felt a growing sense of foreboding, a feeling that they were being watched. The images she had glimpsed within the stone's energy had left her shaken. It wasn't just a power source, it was a key, and she had no idea what door it unlocked. Harding noticed her unease. "You're troubled," he observed gently. "The stone, it showed you something?" Hannah hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It showed me possibilities," she said finally. "Dark possibilities." She didn't elaborate, not wanting to burden him with the full extent of her fears. Deep within the shadows of the forest, a figure watched. Cloaked and concealed, it remained motionless, a silent observer of Hannah and Harding's progress. Only glimpses of its form were visible, the dark fabric of its robes, the glint of something metallic beneath the hood, and the piercing glow of its eyes. Those eyes held an ancient intelligence, a cold and calculating awareness. It had allowed the cloaked figure to be defeated, a deliberate act, a calculated move in a larger game. The sunstone's power had stirred something within the darkness, and now, the game was truly beginning. A faint smile touched the figure's lips, unseen, unheard. The hunt had just begun. Harding tested the edge of his sword, a low hum vibrating from the polished steel. "Something's not right," he murmured, his gaze sweeping across the dense foliage. The forest held its breath, the usual sounds of birdsong absent. Hannah clutched the sunstone tighter, its warmth a small comfort against the growing unease. Its light pulsed faintly, as if responding to an unseen presence. She could feel eyes on them, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. The air grew colder, and a faint whisper seemed to weave through the trees, too indistinct to understand, yet undeniably menacing. Harding stopped abruptly, his hand raised. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low and sharp. Hannah nodded, her eyes darting around nervously. The path ahead seemed to darken, the shadows deepening like pools of ink. They pressed on, their pace quickening, the feeling of being watched intensifying with every step. The sunstone's glow seemed to falter momentarily, then surge back to life, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. This wasn't just a forest, it felt like a labyrinth designed to trap them. Hannah felt a surge of fear, but she pushed it down. The Sunstone was their only hope. It was said to ward off dark creatures, to reveal hidden paths, but its power seemed diminished here. She focused on the stone's light, willing it to grow stronger. "We need to keep moving," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Whatever's following us, it doesn't want us to stop." Harding nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the trees with unwavering intensity. He was a seasoned warrior, but even he seemed unnerved by the oppressive atmosphere. He adjusted his grip on his sword, ready for a fight. They continued their journey, the silence broken only by the crunch of leaves under their feet and the occasional snap of a twig. The whispers persisted, growing slightly louder, seeming to circle them like unseen predators. Hannah noticed strange symbols carved into the bark of some of the trees, symbols she didn't recognize, but that radiated a feeling of ancient power and malice. They were being led, or perhaps lured, deeper into the heart of the forest. Suddenly, shadows detached themselves from the trees, coalescing into vaguely humanoid forms. They moved with unnatural speed and agility, their eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. Harding drew his sword, meeting the attack with swift, decisive strikes. The shadows were insubstantial, but they possessed a chilling strength. Hannah raised the Sunstone, its light erupting in a blinding flash. The shadowy figures recoiled, hissing as if burned. The light pushed back the darkness, creating a small circle of safety around them. But more shadows emerged, relentless in their assault. Harding fought valiantly, deflecting blows and countering with precise attacks. Hannah continued to channel the Sunstone's power, its light a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. She realized the symbols on the trees weren't just decorations, they were wards, weakening the creatures. She began to chant, a forgotten prayer from her grandmother, focusing her energy on the stone. The light intensified, and the shadows faltered, their forms becoming more unstable. Exhaustion began to set in, but Hannah refused to yield. The chanting strained her voice, each syllable a battle against the encroaching darkness. The Sunstone pulsed with power, its light now a radiant sphere, illuminating the clearing with an almost unbearable brilliance. Harding, though battered and bruised, fought with renewed ferocity, exploiting the shadow's weakened state. He moved like a whirlwind, his sword a blur of silver. The air crackled with energy, the clash of steel against shadow echoing through the trees. Hannah continued to chant, her voice growing stronger with each repetition. She felt a connection to the Sunstone, a flow of power coursing through her veins. The shadows shrieked, their forms dissolving as the light intensified. Slowly, painstakingly, they were being driven back. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if the darkness would prevail. With a final, agonizing shriek, the last of the shadowy figures dissolved into nothingness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of quiet anticipation. The Sunstone's light began to fade, its power spent. Hannah collapsed to her knees, breathless and weak. Harding sheathed his sword, his expression grim. They had survived, but the encounter had taken its toll. As the light of the Sunstone dimmed completely, a faint path became visible, winding deeper into the forest. It wasn't there before, hidden by the shadows. "This is the way," Hannah whispered, rising to her feet. The Sunstone, it revealed it. Harding nodded, his eyes fixed on the path. "Let's go," he said. "Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it together." They started down the path, leaving the clearing behind, ready for whatever mysteries the forest held in store. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Hannah's ragged breaths. Harding approached cautiously, his hand still resting on the hilt of his sword. He lowered it slowly, a gesture of respect. "You did it," he said, his voice hoarse. "You truly saved us all." Hannah managed a weak smile, her eyes reflecting the fading glow of the Sunstone. The power had flowed through her, a terrifying and exhilarating experience. She felt drained, but also strangely empowered. The darkness that had plagued the land for so long seemed to recede, not just physically, but within her as well. The Sunstone, now cool to the touch, pulsed one last time before falling silent, its task complete. It had chosen her, and in doing so, had awakened something within her she hadn't known existed. Harding placed a hand on her shoulder. "The people will celebrate," he said. They will speak of your courage for generations. Hannah shook her head. It wasn't just me, she replied. It was us. The connection, the belief, that's what mattered. The first rays of the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose. A new day was dawning, a day free from the shadows. A day where hope could finally take root. As the sun fully crested the horizon, the village stirred to life. People emerged from their homes, their faces etched with relief and wonder. They gathered at the edge of the clearing, gazing upon Hannah and Harding with reverence. Whispers of gratitude rippled through the crowd. The fear that had gripped them for so long had dissipated, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope. Children, who had only known darkness and terror, ran through the streets, their laughter a joyful melody. Farmers looked towards their fields, envisioning a bountiful harvest. The sunstone sacrifice had not only banished the shadows but had also revitalized the land. Plants that had withered under the oppressive darkness began to unfurl, their colors vibrant and alive. Harding watched the scene unfold, a sense of peace settling over him. He had come seeking a legend, a monster to slay. He had found something far more profound, a hero, and a renewed faith in the power of light. Hannah stood at the edge of the clearing, gazing out over the valley. The sunrise painted the landscape in vibrant colors, a testament to the life that had been restored. The villagers gathered around her, their faces filled with admiration and gratitude. They had witnessed her courage, her strength, her unwavering spirit. They had seen her connect with the ancient power of the sunstone, and they knew that she was something special. Hannah felt a surge of responsibility, a sense of purpose she had never known before. The darkness might be gone, but she understood that vigilance was required. The world was full of shadows, and it was her duty to protect it. She wasn't just a villager anymore, she was a guardian, a beacon of hope. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay in wait. The sunstone, once a radiant sphere of power, now lay in fragments. It was shattered, its energy spent. Yet, even in its broken state, it pulsed with a faint, warm glow. Tiny particles of light drifted away from it, like embers scattering on the wind. The destruction wasn't a defeat, but a transformation. The stone had fulfilled its purpose, releasing its energy into the world, nourishing the land and banishing the darkness. Its essence had become part of the very fabric of the valley. Hannah reached out and gently touched a shard of the sunstone. She felt a faint echo of its power, a whisper of its ancient wisdom. The stone was gone, but its legacy would live on. Hannah and Harding walked away from the village, silhouetted against the rising sun. Their journey wasn't over, it was merely beginning. They were bound by a shared experience, a shared purpose. They had faced darkness and emerged victorious, together. The valley behind them was bathed in golden light, a symbol of the hope they had restored. Ahead lay an uncertain future, filled with new challenges and new possibilities. But they were ready. They had learned that even in the darkest of times, there was always light to be found, and that even the smallest spark could ignite a revolution. Their silhouettes grew smaller against the vastness of the horizon, two figures walking towards a brighter tomorrow, forever linked by the memory of the darkness they had overcome.